Strict scrutiny, rational basis test, substantial relationship test, and affirmative action. There we go. So we're going to talk about the 14th Amendment today and a few court cases to deal with this. Jeffrey, you said you want to hear about it.
Jeffrey in charge last night.
Don't you dare take those out. He had a charge.
Yep.
Or you're being over aggressive on the court.
Actually, I ended with 0 fouls. Completely opposite. I ended with 0 fouls.
Really?
First time I think since like 7th grade.
Wow. Are you a foul machine out there? Huh.
Okay.
All right, so what do we have for strict scrutiny? What we got? Jeffrey, go ahead.
Strict scrutiny refers to the form of judicial review that courts use to determine the constitutionality of certain laws or different court cases where there is a close majority votes.
Okay, all right, good job. So form of judicial review where when viewing a law, is it constitutional or not? And for all laws, that's obviously what occurs to make sure it's constitutional, to make sure that there's no uneven treatment of people in a certain matter. And in some cases, they could create a law for a government concern or interest that is shaped to try to benefit their cause, and they can word it in a way that can maybe limit some freedoms of people in certain cases, which we'll talk about. This happens a lot with religion, okay? And some religions, okay, polygamy, and some religions there's sacrifices of animals, and there's laws created to make sure that they can protect the humane treatment of animals. Obviously, kind of goes against that person's religion, but at the same time, you just can't have this occurring out in communities, right? You just can't allow this to happen in society. So there's some cases where the law might be tweaked a little bit to try to prevent some of these wrongdoings in society. And again, the free exercise clause allows people to express their religion without being taken away or limited. But in certain cases, well, like strict scrutiny, there could be stipulations to that, right? There could be a way to try to restrict or limit a freedom depending on, obviously, if it's causing an issue or harm to society. Does that make sense? All right. Rational basis test. What do we have? Go ahead, Taylor. All right. Yeah. Good job. Good job. So, is there a rational review of this, right? Of whatever law might be created, right? So, when you're looking at maybe the age of driving, right? So, how does states come up with the idea of what age is appropriate for driving? Consuming alcohol, right? The right to vote. So, there's many areas where you're looking at it, and you have to obviously you have to make a connection. It's like, well, the development of someone, obviously, after some time, they have the understanding, the concepts to be able to drive, to be able to make decisions politically, and obviously drink alcohol. So that's applied to age groups and just looking at the rational thinking of the development of one person and how that is considered with creating laws. Does that make sense? Okay. Substantial relationship test. What do we have here? So this goes along with a lot of issues of affirmative action, okay, and maybe missed opportunities or unequal opportunities in areas and institutions. Taylor, what do you got? All right. Okay. Okay. So again, looking at the relationship of uh, what the law is trying to state. Okay, what this maybe policy is trying to state. If it is creating an unequal opportunity for one group, let's say a gender, maybe race, or another group, then you got to look at it. You have to have some sort of review or a test to understand its workings to see if this law is constitutional or not. Okay, again, goes along well with affirmative action. What is affirmative action? What does that mean? Go ahead, Angel.
It refers to some policies and practices within the government seeking to include particular groups like gender, race, sexuality, creed, or nationality in areas in which they are underrepresented groups such as education and
Okay, all right, good, good. So many institutions with education, employment, they try to reach a sort of quota system to make sure that there is an equal opportunity for race, gender. Okay, maybe it's another maybe a minority group, whatever it might be. So affirmative action is just making sure there's opportunities for minority groups, gender, sex, you name it. Okay, obviously to have an opportunity in the workplace. Okay, maybe it is education, and creating these opportunities. So again, there's no discrimination. There's no segregation, right, of these issues. All right, so we're going to talk about the 14th Amendment today. And what is the 14th Amendment? Why was it created? Thinking back to the amendments here, we had a test on this. What do we got? What do we got? What is a 14th Amendment? Do we know it? Brock? Oh, there we go. Yeah, good job. Equal protection. Good. Due process, right? And this was created after what? What event happened where this was needed, right? Where this needed to be created here? We know what event occurred in American history where there's many amendments added to the Constitution. Oh, come on. Madden? Jeffrey? No. Nope. It was a war, though. It was a war. No. The Civil War. Thank you. The Civil War. So originally applied to free African Americans, creating opportunities, making sure they have the opportunities and equal protection under the law for all states. Okay. Unfortunately, we know many of the southern states created what? To make sure there was segregation and division. What are they called? Their type of laws. Go ahead, Jeffrey. Jim Crow laws. Yep, good job. Good job. All right, so we're going to talk about a few court cases here. And with the 14th Amendment, how it's creating equal opportunities and citizenship, naturalization process, you name it, for all Americans here. Okay, so again, 14th Amendment, original purpose to protect the rights of former slaves and free blacks. May state governments protect citizens' constitutional rights. And unfortunately, the South obviously had many of these laws created, Jim Crow laws, to prevent the inclusion of African Americans in society. And we'll talk about forms of nonviolent protest today and how this was trying to break these issues, these problems, these concerns in the South. All right, so what court case really kicked off segregation now in the South with the Jim Crow laws? What was that? Do we know? Do we remember? It wasn't a bus, but it was a train. It was a rail car. And how African Americans weren't allowed to use the same rail car as white Americans. Do you remember? Do we know? What did you say? The Continental Railroad. Holy cow. All right. Do we know? Do we know? Sarah, you looking it up now? The Underground Railroad. Plessy versus Ferguson?
I have no clue what you're asking.
Plessy versus Ferguson? No? Okay, there you go. Plessy versus Ferguson. Yeah. So this was creating segregation in the South, where this separate but equal mentality came around. And like I said, very unfortunate, Jim Crow laws created in the South after the Civil War to make it hard for African Americans to be included in many institutions in the South. All right, so the 14th Amendment aimed to try to give people rights, protect their rights after the Civil War, but there's many stipulations to this, right? There's many scenarios and cases here in the South, especially where this caused many concerns and even more division. So today we'll talk about Brown versus Board of Education and how that was finally the court case that ended a lot of these issues in the South with segregation in the United States. All right, so moving on here. So like I was saying, we're going to get to Brown versus Board of Education here soon. So number one, rational basis test to see the right of equality. 2, strict scrutiny test. And 3, substantial relationship test. I'll talk about examples with each of these tests and forms of judicial review when laws are created to see if it obviously fits with national level with the Constitution. Okay, making sure that these laws that are created are constitutional, right? That they are going by the Constitution. If not, well, they can be stricken down, right? So number one, strict scrutiny test. So used for cases dealing with race, nationality, origin, citizenship, or fundamental constitutional rights. And this was what I was saying about how these laws can be created to make sure that a government interest is passed, right? And in some cases, like here with religion, you can't take away people's freedom of exercise, their freedom to perform their religion. So in many cases, the government tries to find a way to pass a certain law for the protection of society, to make sure that there's no harm or dangerous acts that could occur. And this is a good example here. So a town passes a law against ritual animal sacrifice by certain religion. Obviously, you can't tell them not to do this because it's the practice of their religion. But you just can't allow societies to have this in their communities either. You need to protect these animals. You need to make sure that it's humane. And the way around it, well, you're not going to target the religion specifically, but you're going to say it is illegal to practice or obviously kill or sacrifice these animals. So that is obviously ending the problem, the issue of many animal sacrifices. But at the same time, you're protecting yourself because you're not taking away this freedom from someone or, obviously their religious beliefs. Does that make sense? Okay. All right. So again, you're not targeting that said religion. You're not targeting that said group, but you're finding a way to pass a government interest and protection of a community without targeting a group. Okay. It's a stipulation, right? It's a way to try to pass a certain law to make it appease this majority here. So substantial relationship test. So a lot of used with affirmative action, like I was mentioning, with sex discrimination. Okay, and this is a way to try to make sure that there is no division, that there is no separation between groups, okay, like gender. And there's a certain scenario where the government was trying to obviously make males participate more in physical education. Why? Well, ramping up to World War I, ramping up to World War II. And government thought it was the best interest to try to make sure that the men are capable for warfare. And in this case, well, you just can't strict it towards one group, one gender. You have to apply it to all, right? You just can't focus on one gender. So this law, under certain relationship tests, you just can't pass that because it's not fair. It's not creating an equal opportunity for both. Does that make sense? Okay. So here's an example. State law requires high school boys to take 4 years gym and high school girls to take 2. Well, it's unconstitutional. Close connection between male and female needing more physical activity doesn't make sense here, right? It is almost to a point where it's going against one gender. Rational basis test. So is there any rationale review behind this law that is created? And I gave the examples already with driver's license, right? What age is appropriate when driving? What age is appropriate for voting? Or maybe consuming alcohol. And obviously, looking at it, the more development one has, the more connections, experiences, chances are they're going to be a safer driver. They're going to make more informed decisions on political matters and understandings of really concepts of the world. And for alcohol, obviously, being more mature, being more responsible. So rational basis, okay, what is the thinking behind this when reviewing a law that is created? And this goes along well with age requirements for policies and laws that are created. All right, you guys good with the rational basis? All right, so moving on here. Equal protection cases. So Brown versus Board of Education. Like I was saying with Plessy versus Ferguson in 1896, it took all the way up to 1954 after World War II to see finally segregation come to an end. And like I was mentioned before at the start of this chapter, and with federalism, Southern states still try to hold on to this division, to this separation, with Governor Wallace, JFK in the 1960s yet. So this was still a problem, an issue in American society. But Brown versus Board of Education ended segregation in public schools. And this kind of applied to more things like transportation, right, to other institutions and opportunities in the workplace. But this is a landmark case where finally we see segregation coming to an end for public schools. And if Southern states try to maybe back against this, or if they try to maybe find an alternative measure to keep schools segregated, well, the government had the ability, national government, sent federal troops to make sure. And like in the case of Governor Wallace and JFK, that's the exact example with implied powers. You guys remember the implied powers? Yeah, by the government. But still, after, like I mentioned, 1954, we still had a lot of issues with states in the South and the national government when it came to accepting these terms here of desegregating these public schools. So this created many forms of nonviolent protests, which if they're peaceful, if they're not causing any type of harm or issues, well, then these forms of protests are allowed. So bus boycotts, right? Obviously Montgomery bus boycotts you heard before with Rosa Parks. Hunger strikes, another example of nonviolent protest to maybe have a concern that is met. So on public institutions, on public buildings, property, to express your opinion. And after a while, obviously, if you have a person just starving on your doorstep, eventually their voices are going to be met. Eventually, this concern is going to be issued. Petitions. So writing a letter to ask the government or company to change its policy. So the more people that sign it, obviously you're going to have more of a push when it comes to changing a policy or changing a law. And there's many examples that you can come up with that, right? Marches and demonstrations. So with Martin Luther King, many examples of how African Americans gain more opportunities marching in front of public buildings, marching in Washington, D.C., the Capitol, and expressing viewpoints and opinions about civil rights. Strikes, so refusing to work in order to force managers or government to change their policies. So if no one's working, if no one is there maybe producing goods, or in some cases, let's say with education, obviously that's going to cause a disruption in the community and something would have to be done. Whether it's better compensation, better hours, conditions, whatever it might be. Sit-ins. So I don't know if anybody heard about the Greenboro sit-ins. Last year we talked about it. Jeffrey, remember? Yeah, okay. What happened?
People sitting at a diner where like
Oh, good work.
People decided to throw stuff at them, shout stuff at them.
Came to a point I didn't show the picture here, but there's sundaes and soda dumped on these people, not only African Americans, but white activists as well, that were sitting in on the business, on the restaurant, because they had obviously segregated business restaurant. They had it on the door, no African Americans allowed. And the sit-ins were a way to try to peacefully protest. They sat at the dining table until they were served. And it didn't happen, obviously, right away. And many people around the community came in and that were against the sit-ins. And like Jeffrey was stating, throwing food on the people, to a point, dumping soda, verbally abusing these people. It was terrible. It was terrible. And where did that happen? You remember? Greensboro, North Carolina, right? Yeah, there you go. Good job. So late 1950s, right around the time of Brown versus Board of Education. All right, last thing I want to go over, affirmative action. And we already talked about affirmative action, and this is to try to create more opportunities for minority groups, gender, race, religious groups, ethnic groups, you name it. So not only in the workplace, but education and other forms of institutions in the United States. And there's many laws established not only in the South, but in the North that had strict rules of hiring for businesses against other races, other genders. Okay, well, obviously women and other social interest groups or religious groups. And really in 1970, we see a change here. There's a famous court case, Reed versus Reed, that really put affirmative action into play. Finally, in the 1970s, took a long time. Seems like it's not too long ago. All right, is there any questions on that, guys? So I was thinking a review Monday, test Tuesday, and for the assignment I'm about to put out here, Wednesday, I like the video presentations due. Since we talked about a lot of court cases, I think it would be interesting for you guys to maybe make a video about one. I like you to be in it. I like you to be in it. So in a way, you can reenact the court case. I think it'd be cool. I think it'd be cool. Jeffrey, I think you'd have fun with this. Huh? You can put your movie quotes together. Maybe you can hit it big with this video. Who knows? Maybe you'll get into the next Spider-Man movie or something. Maybe. All right. Do you want me to tell you the ending? I'm just joking. All right. All right. So here at the bottom, you'll see I'll post the study guide, the vocab. So that's all ready to go for you guys. And here is assignment. So recreate a court case video assignment. Click right on that. You guys can follow along. So here are the directions for it. The rubrics attached underneath. Okay, so directions. Explain a famous court case that we discussed in class during this chapter. Please pay attention. I don't want to see it on your phones. And there's many of them. We went over, heck, almost 20, I believe, court cases already. And I think it's interesting, maybe if you could reenact one and bring it back to life. So this video should be around 2 to 5 minutes long. Okay, I don't want it really any longer than that just because we got to get through all of them. You can work with a partner. I actually prefer you to work with a partner so that these videos are good. But introduce the court case, deliver an introduction that pertains to the case that draws the viewer's attention. This could include specific time period, okay, political atmosphere and beliefs during the time era, events occurring in American history during the time. So we talked a lot about court cases with the Red Scare. Now we talked and mentioned about Tinker versus Des Moines, the Vietnam War. That's kind of what I'm looking for. So discuss the atmosphere in America when explaining a court case. Case summary, detail the events of this case. Why was a Supreme Court case important, significant? So was it about freedom of speech, expression, religion? Was it about the freedom of the press, assembly, you name it? With your summary of the case, describe the atmosphere in America at the time. So very similar of what was above when you're trying to introduce. Results. What were the results of the court case? Did the judges rule? How did the judges rule the case? Detail a specific quote stated from the Supreme Court judge about the matter. So with a lot of these court cases, there was precedent set. There was a quote that determines the meaning of court cases moving forward with similar circumstances. So like I said, was there precedent set? Include viewpoints and different opinions on the court ruling. So you're gonna have to do a little bit of research on it. So what were people thinking about the court case? What were people thinking about the result of it? Conclusion, explain the lasting effect this case has on the judicial system in America. Summarize the details about the case and its results. And then finally, what's your opinion about it, right? So discuss your opinion about the matter. Maybe it was one that was overturned. So I know we talked about Minersville versus Cobitus, and we mentioned West Virginia versus Barnett, and how Barnett actually reversed the rule of that court case. Research and evidence. So cite your material if you use an online resource, which you should, in MLA format. You can just have it at the end of your video, right at the end. Here are the court cases you can reference from. If there's one on there that maybe you want to research and I don't have, just let me know before you research it. And I'm going to put a discussion post up. So make sure you guys decide what court case you want. I don't want the same one over and over again. Okay, so I'm going to put that up and you guys can type in what court case you want to research. And here's a rubric at the bottom. Okay, know what we're doing? All right, sweet, sweet.